Chapter 8 of Galactic Patrol by E. E. Smith. Chapter 8. Wurzel knew his council of scientists, as well he might, since it developed that he himself ranked high in that select circle. True to his promises, the largest spaceport of the planet was immediately emptied of its customary personnel, which was replaced the following morning by an entirely new group of workmen. Nor were these replacements ordinary laborers. They were young, keen, and highly trained, taken to a man from behind the thought screens of the scientists. It is true that they had no inkling of what they were to do, since none of them had ever dreamed of the possibility of such engines as they were to be called upon to construct. But upon the other hand, they were well versed in the fundamental theories and operations of mathematics, and from pure mathematics to applied mechanics is but a step. Furthermore, they had brains, knew how to think logically, coherently, and effectively, and needed neither driving nor supervision, only instruction. And best of all, practically every one of the required mechanisms already existed, in miniature, within the Britannia's lifeboat, ready at hand for their dissection, analysis, and enlargement. It was not lack of understanding which was to slow up the work. It was simply that the planet did not boast machine tools and equipment large enough or strong enough to handle the necessarily huge and heavy parts and members required. While the construction of this heavy machinery was being rushed through, Kinnison and Van Buskirk devoted their efforts to the fabrication of an ultra-sensitive receiver, tunable to the pirates' scrambled wave bands. With their exactly detailed knowledge, and with the cleverest technicians and the choicest equipment of Valantia at their disposal, the set was soon completed. Kinnison was giving its exceedingly delicate coils their final alignment, when Wurzel wriggled blithely into the radio laboratory. "Hi, Kimball Kinnison of the Lens," he called gaily, throwing some 20 feet of his serpent's body in lightning loops about a convenient pillar. He made a horizontal bar of the rest of himself, and dropped one wingtip to the floor. Then, nonchalantly upside down, he thrust out 3 or 4 eyes and curled their stalks over the Lensman's shoulder, the better to inspect the results of the mechanic's efforts. Gone was the morose, pessimistic, death-haunted Wurzel, who had wrought and fought beside the armored pair upon fantastically inimical Delgon. This was a new Wurzel entirely, gay, happy, carefree, and actually frolicsome, if you can imagine a 30-foot-long, crocodile-headed, leather-winged python as being frolicsome. "Hi, your royal snakeship," Kinnison retorted in kind. "Still here, huh? Thought you'd be back on Delgon by this time, cleaning up the rest of that mess." "The equipment is not ready, but there's no hurry about that." The playful reptile unwrapped 10 or 12 feet of tail from the pillar and waved it airily about. "Their power's broken. Their race is done. You were about to try out the new receiver?" "Yes, going out after them right now." Kinnison began deftly to manipulate the micrometric verniers of his dials. Eyes fixed upon meters and gauges, he listened, increased his power, and listened again. More and more power he applied to his apparatus, listening continually. Suddenly he stiffened, his hands becoming rock still. He listened, if possible even more intently than before, and as he listened his face grew grim and granite hard. Then the micrometers began again, crawlingly to move, as though he were tracing a beam. "Bus, hook on the focusing beam antenna," he snapped. "It's going to take every milliwatt of power we've got in this hookup to tap his beam, but I think I got Helmuth direct instead of through a pirate ship relay." Again and again he checked the readings of his dials, and of the directors of his antenna, each time noting the exact time of the Valantian day. "There! As soon as we get some time, Wurzel, I'd like to work out these figures with some of your astronomers. They'll give me a right line through to Helmuth's headquarters, I hope. Some day, if I'm spared, I'll get another." "What kind of news did you get?" asked Van Buskirk. "Good and bad both," replied the Lensman. "Good in that Helmuth doesn't believe that we stayed with his ship as long as we did. He's a suspicious devil, you know, and is pretty well convinced that we tried to run the same kind of a blazer on him that we did the other time. Since he hasn't got enough ships on the job to work the whole line, he's concentrating on the other end. That means that we've got plenty of days left. The bad part of it is that they've got 4 of our boats already and are bound to get more. Lord, how I wish I could call the rest of them. Some of them could certainly make it here before they got caught. Might I then offer a suggestion? Asked Warsaw, suddenly diffident. Surely, the Lensman replied in surprise. Your ideas have never been any kind of poppycock. Why so bashful all at once? Because this one is so peculiarly personal. Since you men regard so highly the privacy of your minds. Our 2 sciences, as you have already observed, are vastly different. You are far beyond us in mechanics, physics, chemistry, and the other applied sciences. We, on the other hand, have delved much deeper than you have into psychology and the other introspective studies. For that reason, I know positively that the lens you wear is capable of enormously greater things than you are at present able to perform. Of course, I cannot use your lens directly, since it is attuned to your own ego. However, if the idea appeals to you, I could, with your consent, occupy your mind and use your lens to put you en rapport with your fellows. I have not volunteered the suggestion before, because I know how averse your mind is to any foreign control. Not necessarily to foreign control, Kinnison corrected him. Only to enemy control. The idea of friendly control never occurred to me. That would be an entirely different breed of cats. Go to it. Kinnison relaxed his mind completely, and that of the Valanchian came welling in, wave upon friendly surging wave of benevolent power. And not only or not precisely power, it was more than power. It was a calm, cool, placid certainty, a depth and clarity of perception that Kinnison in his most cogent moments had never dreamed a possibility. The possessor of that mind knew things, cameo clear in microscopic detail, which the keenest minds of earth could perceive only as chaotically indistinct masses of mental light and shade, of no recognizable pattern whatever. Give me the thought pattern of him with whom you wish first to converse, came Warsaw's thought, this time from deep within the Lensman's own brain. Kinnison felt a subtle thrill of uneasiness at that new and ultra-strange dual personality, but thought back steadily. Sorry, I can't. Excuse me. I should have known that you cannot think in our patterns. Think, then, of him as a person, an individual. That will give me, I believe, sufficient data. Into the Earthman's mind there leaped a picture of Henderson, sharp and clear. He felt his lens actually tingle and throb, as a concentration of vital force such as he had never known, poured through his whole being and into that almost living creation of the Eurasians. And immediately thereafter he was in full mental communication with the chief pilot of the ill-fated Britannia. And there, seated across the tiny mess table of their lifeboat, was Thorndyke, the master technician. Henderson came to his feet with a yell, as the telepathic message bombarded into his brain, and it required several seconds to convince him that he was not the victim of space insanity or suffering from any other form of hallucination. Once convinced, however, he acted. His lifeboat shot toward far Valantia at maximum blast. Then, Nelson, Allardyce, Thompson, Jenkins, Eulenhuth, Smith, Chatway. Kinnison called the roll of the survivors. Nelson, the Britannia's communications officer, answered his captain's call. So did Allardyce, the juggling quartermaster. So did Eulenhuth, a technician. So did those in 3 other boats. 2 of those 3 were apparently well within the danger zone, and might get nipped in their dash, but their crews elected without hesitation to take the chance. 4 boats, it was already known, had been captured by the pirates. The remaining 8 were either so distant as to be out of range of even the Warsaw-driven Lens, or they'd been taken by pirates who had not yet reported to Helmuth. 8 out of 20, Kinnison mused. Not so good, but it could have been a lot worse. They might have very well taken us all by this time. Then he turned to the Valanchian, who had withdrawn his mind as soon as its task was done. Thanks, Warsaw, he said simply. Some of those lads coming in have got plenty of just what it takes, and how we can use them. One by one, the lifeboats of the Britannia came into port, where the crews were welcomed briefly but feelingly, before they were put to work. Nelson, the communications officer, among the last to arrive, was to the Lensmen particularly welcome. "Nels, we need you badly," Kinnison informed him as soon as greetings had been exchanged. "The pirates have a beam, carrying a peculiarly scrambled wave, that they can receive and decode through any kind of ordinary blanketing interference, and you're the best man of us all to study their system. Some of these Valantian scientists can probably help you a lot on that. Any race that can develop a screen against thought figures to know more than somewhat about vibration in general. We've got working models of the pirates' instruments, so that you can figure out their patterns and formulas. That ought to be simple. When you've done that, I want you and your Valantians to design something that will scramble all the pirates' communicator beams in space, from here to the near rim of the galaxy. If you can fix things so that they can't talk, any more than we can, it'll help a lot, believe me. QX, Chief. We'll give it the works." And the radio man called for tools, apparatus, and electricians. Then throughout the great spaceport, the many Valantians and the handful of patrolmen labored mightily side by side, and to very good effect indeed. Slowly the port became ringed about by, and studied everywhere with, monstrous mechanisms. Everywhere there were projectors, refractory throated demons, ready to vomit forth every force known to the expert technicians of the patrol. There were absorbers, too, backed by their bleeder resistors, air gaps, ground rods, and racks for discharged accumulators. There, too, were receptors and converters, for the cosmic energy which was to empower many of the devices. There were, of course, atomic motor generators by the score, and battery upon battery of gigantic accumulators. And Nelson's high-powered scrambler was ready to go to work. These machines appeared crude, rough, unfinished, for neither time nor labor had been wasted upon non-essentials. But inside each one the moving parts fitted with micrometric accuracy and with hairspring balance. All, without exception, functioned perfectly. At Worsel's call, Kinnison climbed up out of a great beam-proof pit, the top of whose wall was practically composed of tractor beam projectors. Pausing only to make sure that a sticking switch on one of the screen dome generators had been replaced, he hurried to the heavily armed control room, where his little force of fellow patrolmen awaited him. "They're coming, boys," he announced. "You all know what to do. There are a lot more things that we could have done if we'd had more time, but as it is, we'll go to work on them with what we've got." And Kinnison, again all brisk captain, bent over his instruments. In the ordinary course of events, the pirate would have flashed up to the planet, with spy rays out and issuing a peremptory demand for the planet to show a clean bill of health, or to surrender instantly, such fugitives as might lately have landed upon it. But Kinnison did not, could not wait for that. The spy rays, he knew, would reveal the presence of his armament, and such armament most certainly did not belong to this planet. Therefore, the instant that the pirate ship came within range of his detectors, he acted, and forthwith everything happened at once, with furious swiftness. A tracer lashed out, the pilot ray of the rim battery of extraordinarily powerful tractors. Under the urge of those beams, the inertialess ship flashed down toward their center of action, which was the geometrical center of the spaceport's deep ray-proof pit. At the same moment, Nelson's scrambler burst into activity, a dome screen against cosmic energy intake, and a full circle of super-powered attacking rays. All these things occurred in the twinkling of an eye, and the vessel was being slowed down by the atmosphere of Valantia before her startled commander could even realize that he was being attacked. Only the presence of automatically reacting defensive screens saved that ship from instant destruction. But they did so save it, and in seconds the pirates' every weapon was furiously ablaze. In vain. The defenses of that pit could take it. They were driven by mechanisms easily able to absorb the output of any equipment mountable upon a mobile base. And to his consternation the pirate found that his cosmic energy intake was at and remained at 0. He sent out call after call for help, but could not make contact with any other pirate station. Ether and sub-ether alike were closed to him. His signals were blanketed completely. Nor could his drivers, even though operating at ruinous overload, move him from the geometrical center of that incandescently flaming pit. So inconceivably rigid were the tractor's clamps upon him. And soon his power began to fail. His vessel, designed to operate upon cosmic energy intake, carried only enough accumulators for stabilization of power flow, an amount ridiculously inadequate for a combat as profligate of energy as this. But strangely enough, as his defense weakened, so lessened the power of the attack. It was no part of the Lensmen's plan to destroy this super dreadnought of the void. That was one good thing about the old Britannia, he gritted as he cut down, step by step, the power of his beams. Nobody could block her off from what power she had. Soon the stored-up energy of the battleship was exhausted, and she lay there quiescent. Then giant pressors went into action, and she was lifted over the wall of the pit, to settle down in an open space beside it, open but still under the domes of force. Kinnison had no needle rays as yet, the time at his disposal having been sufficient only for the construction of the absolutely essential items of equipment. Now, while he was debating with his fellows as to what part of the vessel to destroy in order to wipe out its crew, the pirates themselves ended the debate. Ports yawned on the vessel's armored side, and they came out fighting. For they were not a breed to die like rats in a trap, and they knew that to remain inside their vessel was to die whenever and however their captors willed. They knew also that die they must if they could not conquer. Their surrender, even if it should be accepted, would mean only a somewhat later death in the lethal chambers of the law. In the open they could at least take some of their foes with them. Furthermore, not being men as we know men, they had nothing in common with either human beings or Valantians. Both of them were vermin, as they themselves were to the beings manning this surprisingly impregnable fortress, here in this waste corner of the galaxy. Therefore, space-hardened veterans all, they fought, with the insane ferocity and desperation of the ultimately last stand, but they did not conquer. Instead, to the last man, they died. As soon as the battle was over, before the interference blanketing the pirates' communicators was cut off, Kinnison went through the captured vessel, destroying the headquarters visiplates and every automatic sender which could transmit any kind of a message to any pirate base. Then the interference was stopped, the domes were released, the ship was removed from the field of operations. Then, while Thorndyke and his reptilian aides, themselves now radio experts of no mean attainments, busied themselves at installing a high-powered scrambler aboard her, Kinnison and Worsel scanned space in search of more prey. Soon they found it, more distant than the first one had been, 2 solar systems away, and in an entirely different direction. Tracers and tractors and interference and domes of force again became the order of the day. Projectors again raved out in their incandescent might, and soon another immense cruiser of the void lay beside her sister ship. Another and another, then for a long time space was blank. The Lensman then energized his ultra receiver, pointing his antenna carefully into the galactic line to Helmuth's base, as laid down for him by the Valantian astronomers. Again, so tight and hard was Helmuth's beam, he had to drive his apparatus so unmercifully that the tube noise almost drowned out the signals. But again he was rewarded by hearing faintly the voice of the pirate director of operations. 4 vessels, all within or near one of those 5 solar systems, have ceased communicating, each cessation being accompanied by a period of blanketing interference of a pattern never before registered. You 2 vessels who are receiving these orders are instructed to investigate that region with the utmost care. Go with screens out and everything on the trips, and with automatic recorders set on me here. It is not believed that the patrol has anything to do with this. as ability has been shown transcending anything it has been known to possess. As a working hypothesis, it is assumed that one of those solar systems, hitherto practically unexplored and unknown, is in reality the seat of a highly advanced race, which perhaps has taken offense at the attitude or conduct of our first ship to visit them. Therefore, proceed with extreme caution, with a thorough spy ray search at extreme range before approaching at all. If you land, use tact and diplomacy instead of the customary tactics. Find out whether our ships and crews have been destroyed or are only being held. And remember, automatic reporters on at all times. Helmuth, speaking for Boskoni, off. For minutes Kinnison manipulated his micrometer in vain. He could not get another sound. "What are you trying to get, Kim?" asked Thorndyke. "Wasn't that enough?" The message had been rebroadcast to the minds of the others by Warsaw, as fast as it had entered the Lensmen's ears. "No, that's only half of it," Kinnison returned. "Helmuth's nobody's fool. He's certainly trying to plot the boundaries of our interference, and I want to see how he's coming out with it, but no dice. He's so far away, and his beam's so hard, that I can't work him unless he happens to be talking almost directly toward us. Well, it won't be long now until we'll give him some real interference to plot. Now we'll see what we can do about those two other ships that are heading this way. On your toes, everybody." Carefully as those two ships investigated, and sedulously as they sought to obey Helmuth's instructions, all their precautions amounted to exactly nothing. As ordered, they began a spy ray survey at extreme range. But even at that range, Kinnison's tracers were effective, and those two ships also ceased communicating in a blaze of interference. Then recent history repeated itself. The details were changed somewhat, since there were two vessels instead of one, but the pit was of ample size to accommodate two ships, and the tractors could hold two as well and as rigidly as one. The conflict was a little longer, the beaming a little hotter and more quiescent, but the ending was the same. Scramblers were quickly installed, and Kinnison addressed his men, already in the ships. "Well, we're about ready to shove off again. Running away has worked twice so far, with very good results. Once in the old Britannia and once in the pirates' own ships. It should work again, if we can ring in enough variations on the theme to keep Helmuth guessing a while longer. Maybe if the supply of pirate ships keeps up, we'll be able to make Helmuth furnish us transportation all the way back to base. Here's the idea. We've got 6 ships, and there's enough of us to drive them. Some of the younger Valancians have joined us, in spite of the fact that I've told them that the chances are against them ever getting back. Enough of them, in fact, to make up almost full crews of us all. But 6 ships isn't enough of a squadron to fight through the fleets that Helmuth will have organized if we go in a body. So we'll spread out radially, covering thousands of parsecs before we get halfway to base, and broadcasting every watt of interference we can put out, all along the way, in as many different shapes and powers as our apparatus will permit. We can't talk to each other, of course, but nothing else can talk anywhere in the same sector of the galaxy either, and that will give us the edge. Each ship will be on its own, as we were before in the boats, the big difference being that we'll be in super dreadnoughts instead of lifeboats. Now, Warsaw, if the pirates check up and follow the disturbance, we're going to make sure they won't bother you folks at all. In fact, if they ever succeed in finding the center of that interference, there will be nothing there except empty space. But if they don't follow us, and Helmuth is apt to insist upon a thorough study of this region before he does anything else, you folks are due for an inspection, and the next inspection will mean a real battle instead of a slaughter. The first spy ray will reveal this stuff here, but I don't suppose you want to hide it or destroy it?" "We do not," the Valancian replied positively. "Let them come, in whatever force they care to bring. The more that attack here, the less there will be to halt your progress. This armament represents the best of that possessed by both your patrol and the pirates, with improvements developed by your scientists and ours in full cooperation. We understand thoroughly its construction, operation, and maintenance. You may rest assured that the pirates will never levy tribute upon us, and that any pirate visiting this system will remain in it permanently. Out a snake, Worsel. Long may you wiggle, Kinnison exclaimed. Then more seriously, maybe after all this is over I'll see you again sometime. If not, goodbye. Goodbye all Valantia. All set, boys. Clear ether and light landings to you all. Blast off! 6 ships, once pirate craft, now vessels of the Galactic Patrol, hurled themselves into and through Valantian air, into and through interplanetary space, out into the larger, wider, more obstructed emptiness of the interstellar void. 6, each broadcasting with prodigious power and volume, an all-inclusive interference through which no pirate communicator or Visiray beam could possibly be driven. End of chapter 8.